Hello, welcome back to another Tabletop Talk. So today I'm going to talk about options in Stratomatic hockey in particular, but it got me to thinking about how this applies pretty much to all the games that I play. So you have Stratomatic, which has it laid out obviously in basic, advanced, and super advanced. All their games are set up that way, but even in other games that may not have it delineated quite that distinctly, you still have advanced options like season ticket baseball. You know, they don't have an advanced and super advanced per se, but they have different options that you can add to the game to make it more realistic or more detailed, probably would be a better way to put it. And so, you know, the dynamic that's going on there is kind of interesting to me as I've been thinking about it. So in Stratomatic hockey in particular, and again, this will apply, I think, to other games as well, is when I bought this a couple years ago, I started out with super advanced, and I think that tends to be the way I roll. I don't know if it's my personality or if I feel like I'm getting cheated if I don't play all of the available options. I found, however, that when I did do all the available options, number one, it took a lot longer to learn how to play. Number two, it got to where I didn't want to play as much because it was making the gameplay so weighty and difficult, and that I just wasn't enjoying the game anymore. So I just basically went on to something else. I didn't really think about that, about it really causing me to stop playing. I just stopped playing, and so when I picked it back up a month or so ago, I thought I would just jump right into basic because I had forgotten a lot of what I had learned in the past, and so I couldn't jump right back into super advanced because it had been so long since I played it, and I hadn't played it a long time. I hadn't memorized the game, so it wasn't like riding a bike for me. So I just jumped into basic. Now, when I first got the game, I didn't play basic at all. Went right to super advanced as fast as I could. But surprisingly enough, I enjoyed the basic. It was enjoyable, and so I find that the more I play a game, the less satisfied I get with it, and the more I want to add to it, if that makes any sense. So even now, this round with Stratomatic hockey, I started out with basic, and then I went to advanced, which I like pretty well, and then now I'm starting to want to add some super advanced options, which I'll talk about in detail a little bit more in a minute. So I went from playing a game, a quarter, or a period rather. I keep calling hockey quarters, not periods. It went from like 20 minutes to now I'm up to about 30 minutes, roughly per period. And so some of that's keeping score, but again, it's just taking it longer. And so I'm debating with myself, is it worth it? The added detail. So I might find myself kind of, regressing back into getting more back to basic again, to get back to that the playability where I'm not taking forever, and it's just not the time, it's all the added calculations. Sometimes with a game, no matter what it is, the basic version of it, whether it's called that or not, it flows well. You get, there's not a ton of calculations. For me, it's like following the rabbit trail, or the formula. If A is true, then go to B. If not, go to C, and then from there reference D, and if so, go to F. When the further I get down that, more likely I am to lose my place. And when that happens, I stop having fun. Again, it's not just the time that's involved to play more advanced, it's the added thinking. And so, again, all of us have abilities, when it comes to computations. And so I think that would play into whether we would enjoy those added computations. I think everybody wants to be as realistic as possible. I mean, all of us want as much detail as we can get. And the games that give us the more detail with the less mental work and the quicker you can get to that, I think all of us enjoy that. And certain games are certainly better at that than others. I know, like Appa Baseball, for example. Again, it's a simple game, but the added level of realism you get that are built into the game itself is just great. That's why I enjoy Appa Baseball so much, is because you get a lot of detail and a lot of things come into play. It's not as in-depth as some other games, but it's not just simplistic either. Run rating, again, they're simple in that either you're fast, average, or slow, but it comes into the outcome of the game, and so it matters. You don't have as much decisions to make in Appa, which again is something else. It is the realistic detail is one thing, more decisions to make, and then computations to get to those results. That's something different. So Appa, you get a lot of detail, and the results, you don't have a lot of decisions to make. Generally, if he's fast, he takes the extra base. If he's slow, he's thrown out. And so, again, it's not decisions as much as it is the results. And so the results are caked in. You don't have to roll an extra die. You don't have to add the outfielder's arm and the wind, if it's blowing from outfield in, or if it's 20 degrees outside. Again, you don't have to do any calculating. It's just if he's fast, he makes it. If he's slow, he doesn't. And so that's kind of an added level of detail that you get without having to do any extra work. It's just kind of built into the game. And so I think that's one reason why people enjoy Appa so much, because when you first get into it, you're thinking, well, this is a real simple game, but it's simple but not simplistic. Again, a lot of different things are going into the result, and you don't have to do anything extra to get that result, and I think that's brilliant. And so I wonder to myself why I immediately go to super advanced as possible. And a friend of mine, we were talking about this, and he suggested that because of the YouTube community, there's a bit of peer pressure. We see other guys, getting on and playing, the super advanced rules, and we feel like we maybe need to compete with that subconsciously. I thought that was an interesting thought. I'm not for sure how much of that's true, but I certainly believe some of it is. You have that pressure that, if I'm going to play this game, I need to really get into it and do all the bells and the whistles. And so, there's that. And again, I think all of us want to be as detailed as we can. I feel like, me personally, I feel like I'm getting my money's worth if I'm playing all the rules and getting all the options. But again, when it starts getting to the point where I'm not enjoying it, it's taking too long, and I'm having to think too hard to where the game stops flowing for me. That is where I start finding problems, and I'm just coming to realize that. Again, I was a strat guy and did some computer games for a long time. A couple years ago, got back into the hobby and started experimenting with other games, other sports. And so, again, I'm still kind of a relative newbie in this area. And so it's just kind of a revelation to me recently that, maybe I'm trying too hard to get all the bells and whistles, and it's causing me not to want to play the games. And so, especially revisiting Stratomatic Hockey, I'm coming to see, okay, now I need to figure out where that balance is for me in this particular game. So again, every game's going to be different because every game, again, the bells, the whistles, the advancements, some of them are more complicated for me than others, and so that trying to find that medium is kind of where I'm at right now, trying to find that happy spot in the middle. I know, like for example, I've had a few comments on the Stratomatic hockey about some of the super advanced rules, and why I didn't do them. And it was interesting to me is that super advanced baseball, because I have played that so long, it would be more difficult for me to try to play basic or advanced because I haven't done that in so long. The super advanced is easier to me. I think of Tebow and his Appa master game. I think it's easier for him to play the master game just because he has played it so long. That's the way he knows it. And so he can revert, I'm sure, but again, he knows it, and his flow is the master game. And so, that's easier for him. And of course, he has, built up into that after years of practice. So for me, super advanced baseball is easier than the other two. Hockey, not so much, because again, I'm just a couple years into the Stratomatic hockey, and so I'm not to that degree. And so all of us, we have things that are important to us in a particular sport, and I think part of that is how seriously we take the sport. So for me, baseball, I want more detail in my baseball game because baseball is my sport. Hockey is not my sport. Probably of the 5 sports, and I'm adding golf into that, it's the one I know the least and have followed the least in my lifetime. And so I think I would be more willing to make some concessions in hockey than I would in baseball. And I think I see that with Dave Gardner. His game is hockey. He likes baseball. And so I think, watching his videos, he seems to be willing to concede more in baseball, and I think he wants more out of his hockey games because he is a hockey guy, and so that's his favorite sport. And so I think that plays into it. And again, we all have our different mental abilities. I know my mental abilities aren't what they were 20 years ago or 30 years ago or even 5 years ago. And so, again, if I'm having to go into the weeds and, again, go down that formula hole and then I forget where I'm at, my fun level goes away really fast. And so I think that plays into it. And so, again, there's, we all have different places. And so I think it's important to realize that, and most of my commenters have been really good about that, and I appreciate you guys for that. Number one, I love the suggestions. Keep them coming. And, just don't be offended if I decide not to go that route. And most people have been, very understanding that they understand that we all are in different places, and something that might be important to you, vitally important, of the utmost importance, might not be as important to me because of some of the different factors that we've been discussing. And so, that's one thing, I think the community is getting really good at, is that you don't have to play the way that I play, and I don't have to play the way you play. But it's really enjoyable to discuss these things because, quite a few of the comments I have added because it's like, that's a great idea. And, it adds to my play. Other ones I've tried and, like, some I don't. So it's really fun to hear what other people are doing, just to see if it's something I like, but, be willing to understand that we all aren't in the same space, and be willing to be okay with that, and be willing to listen to what other people are doing, because I enjoy that. So I know, for example, getting into strat hockey just a little bit, I got a suggestion about the alternate penetrations. That sounds like a dirty movie, but that's what they call it. And so At first, my reservation is well, the game's not designed that way, and I was afraid by making the wings go against the defenders instead of the wings versus the wings, how the game originally had it set up, that I might be messing up the formulas. But as I further read the rule book, you do have the option. They give you the option to do the alternate penetrations, and so I've got this chart here where I've got the wingers against the defensemen. This is the the way they are normal. So actually, I have been playing it this way, and I enjoy it. It feels more like hockey, and again, I'm not a hockey guy, but what little I know about it, generally your wing left and right wing are going against the defenseman, and so I'm going with that. And then in the advanced, the cards actually will give you the ability, they'll tell you to go against somebody different. Like, the left wing will go against the center, or maybe he'll go against the left defenseman. And hockey's like that. They're moving around constantly. So even though they try to stay in certain zones, they will, run into other people. And so, by doing this, which is who they'll generally up against, and then the super advanced or the advanced action cards, they'll give you other options. So I like that. That's working for me. So, you're not doing the same defender every time, but you are, generally going against who you would go to against in real life. Another thing I'm doing, which is I think a super advanced rule, but again, you can put it into your advanced, is if you have a defenseman, and they shoot from outside and they get an 8, you have the option to deflect. And you'll see that you see 8 is rebound or deflect. And then like on the left wing, you don't have that option. So it has to be one of your defenders. And I really like that rule. It's something that's not too difficult. So basically, if you get an 8 on an outside shot, generally there's a rebound. And then you pick a split deck card to see what the rebound is. If you have an outside or a defenseman that shoots from outside, you can try to get one of your forwards to deflect. So you just roll a 6-sided die. 1 to 2 is the left wing, 3 to 4 is the center, 5 to 6 is the right wing, and then you roll on their inside shot. And if you get a goal, then a goal or a goal rating, then you would go to the goalies, and if he does, he deflects it. If he doesn't, if you get any other option, then it's an automatic rebound to the defense. Any player, the defenseman gets credited for an outside shot. So again, that's something that happens in hockey, and it adds a bit of excitement that doesn't add too much to the play. So that's one super advanced rule that I'm doing. Another one I'm doing, which doesn't come into play in modern game as much, seems like, is what they call the enforcer. So everybody's got a penalty rating. So what they consider an enforcer is anybody with an A or a double A penalty rating. So those obviously are your bruisers who spend a lot of time fighting, and enforcers and things like that. So if you have an enforcer on the ice and the other team doesn't have an enforcer, then that means everybody's penetration rating on the other team goes down 1. Unless you're a 1, then it stays at a 0. So basically, if you have an enforcer on the ice, it's a little harder to get inside to get that inside shot. And so that's kind of cool that I'm liking that. I'm not for sure whether I'll stick with that one yet, but I'm doing it right now. And so what that does is that it gives the qualities another opportunity to make a difference in the game, and I like that. So I know, like with the advanced, you're using your intimidation rating, which you don't in basic, which I like, which is kind of a defensive quality. You also use your defensive rating, which you don't in basic. So like when you're trying to penetrate, you're looking at their defense. So Seabrook here is a 4, so he's tough to get in on, and so that comes into play in advanced. So again, it makes it more realistic, but again, it's not as easy, when on the basic penetration, it's just one roll. It doesn't matter who you're against. And again, there's advantages to that. So you have to decide, do I want to bring in that added, defensive quality of whoever he's up against, or do I just want to go with the penetration quality of whoever's trying to get in to get the inside shot? So for me, the advanced kind of gave me that added level of difficulty without making it, or added level of realism without making it too much more difficult. So again, I've increased my, and again, I'm still learning it, so I'm sure the time will whittle off a little bit, but I could do a period in about 20 minutes, and now I'm up to closer to 30. So I might, decide to whittle some of this back down. But that's, so the alternate penetration I like. And that really doesn't add much time to it, except for that I have to try to remember who is where. And so when I'm putting my line shifts on, I have to remember to make sure that I've got the wings in the right place and the defenseman. And been a couple times that I have messed that up. Another one is, so the penalty is the big one. The biggest difference between the super advanced and the advanced is the penalty. So in advanced and basic, you basically will check one thing on the one rating of a defender, and then you've got two options based on how that works out, and then you just roll shots to see if they score or not. On the super advanced, you actually play it like the rest of the game. And so I tried super advanced and I learned how to do it. ID gesture at the time. This is where your timing on your penalty is. Did a video at the time about how to do that, and so that was very helpful. I figured it out, but it just got to where it was adding way too much time to the game, and so that was for me an area where I'm sacrificing. I would really like to do the super advanced penalty, because it gives you, basically instead of just getting a bird's eye view of what happened during the penalty, you're actually getting details. And so things like their skating ability comes into play, whether they want to ice it or whether they want to keep the puck and try to kill some time. So again, a little bit more of their ratings come into play. But for me, that was just making it too long, too difficult, to where the playability was suffering to the point where that was just not something I was enjoying. So the biggest thing that's bothering me right now is the penalties are always 2 minutes. You don't, in advanced, you don't have any, like where two players get penalties, you don't have any 5-minute fighting penalties, and so those are an important part of hockey. So I'm weighing options on how to handle that. So I don't know if anybody has tried this or not. So you've got your super advanced penalty rating on the green chart here. You also have one on your blue chart, and the blue chart has the added 19 and 20 where you go to a secondary chart. So I'm not for sure if this is super advanced, but I was wondering if there's any way to use this and still use the basic and advanced power play chart. So basically what you would get on this is the opportunity for your opponent to get a penalty as well. You also have the opportunity to get more than just 2 minutes. Like on 13, whoever got the penalty will get 2 minutes, and then if your opponent is a double A, then you both get 5 minutes, and I'm assuming that would be for fighting. And so again, it just gives you a little bit more than just 2 minutes every time. So I don't know how, like if you get a 2 minute, it's 3 cards. So I guess, if you did 2 plus 2, it would be, what would that be, 6 cards? And so again, it's going to change the dynamic of a power play. So I might experiment with this. If anybody has got any experience of adding this chart, again, the one on the green, not the blue, to the advanced and basic power play chart, I'd be interested to know if anybody has done that. So to give you a little bit more realistic results on the power play or on penalties, again, you get some 5 minutes and some even 10-minute misconduct, stuff like that, or get, 2 guys with, both get 2 minutes. you'd have 4-on-4. So I'm not for sure how that. I haven't thought it through enough to know how that would play. With that. Again, I don't really want to go to the super advanced power play because again, that was just too much for me. And I'm already getting to the point where the additions I've made are starting to make the game. I'm getting right at that threshold where I'm, wondering if I'm wanting to back off a little. And of course, another thing is, and which I've kind of touched on earlier, is that the more time you spend with a game, the quicker you get at it, and then you can start adding more. And then you're back to, like when you first starting playing basic, for example, it takes 15 minutes, and then you get good enough at it where it takes you 10 minutes, and so you add a couple options, you're back to 15 minutes, and you work at that and get good at it till where you're back to 10 minutes, and so again, and then you get to the point where it's taking me 20 minutes, and that's no quicker. I can't do any quicker than that. Then at that point, it might be, well, I'm going to take off a couple of these options to get it back to where I want it. And again, it's not just time. It could be the brain power needed to, to be able to play the game. And so those are, all considerations. So for me right now in Stratomatic Hockey, I'm at that point where I'm using some super advanced, and again, the penalties, in my mind, and basic and advanced are very undetailed, and so I'm weighing about how I want to navigate that, whether I want to, dive into that. So again, I'm going to do some experimenting with that green super advanced penalty chart. Would be really interested in anybody, again, that has used that chart with the basic and advanced power play, and see if they have any thoughts on how that worked out, any pointers on things they might use to, navigate that to make that work. Be interested if anybody has any thoughts on that. So another thing that I'm doing is I don't have power play teams. Or penalty kill teams, and again, I know that you're sacrificing some realism there, and for me that was a big one because that was another really big time killer. Number one, you have to figure out who these teams are. You have to figure out if they, you're supposed to switch between the two. You can keep, you can do one power play team twice in a row once a game. It just, you're changing cards, and so, it just added a ton of, trying to figure out, okay, who is where, who's on the power play team. So I have just went with whoever's on the ice. That's the power play and the penalty kill. And I'm finding generally it works out pretty good because most of the time, I have the number one or two teams on the ice. And so, again, it's not exact, but both teams are playing with the same rules, and it just helps the game flow so much faster. Also, instead of, when I first started this game, I would do like the first line, second line, third line, back to the first line in the same period. And now I'm just leaving them on the ice for their full shift. Again, losing a little bit in realism, but it makes up in time. So basically, I just do 1, 2, 3, 4, and that's the period. And then on the third period, I am doing 3, 2, 1. So I've got the main, the first line for both teams to end the game, and so that's working out for me. The game says you should use 3 lines of forwards and 2 lines. That's simpler. I'm finding, especially with the modern seasons, I'm wanting to do the 4 lines, get them in the game. So again, basically what I'm doing is 1, 2, 3, 4, the first period, 1, 2, 3, 4, the second period, and then 3, 2, 1. These are forward lines on the third period. So on the third period, the fourth line forwards and the third line defensemen don't play. And then again, I go from the highest down to the main players, so they're on the end of the ice. The difference I make on that is on the second period, the visitors, I change 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. So basically, You've got home 1 versus visitor 2, and then home 2 versus visitor 1, home 3 versus visitor 4, home 4 versus visitor 3, and these are the forward lines. So if that makes any sense at all. So again, what I'm doing is changing up the matchups a little bit in the second period, adding some realism. And again, at this point, that's working out okay. I've kind of got a system to where I'm getting, I can do that relatively quick. And then again, when the power play comes up, whatever team is on the ice, they handle the power play. And again, I'm finding that's working out pretty good. So that's one thing I'm doing to kind of help there. And again, those are my line shifts. So again, I'm not having the first line 2 different shifts in the same period. That just takes too much time for me. I do know one thing that ID Jester did, where he had the plastic sheets where he could put the lines together and then move them quicker. That's one thing I might decide to do. The only problem with that is that before every game you have to take out the cards and put them in. So I don't know that that would save enough time to make it worth it for me. So again, I've kind of got it where I can change pretty quick. And I'm not changing as much with me not having designated power play teams or penalty kill teams. And so again, losing some in realism, but for me that was just taking too long to try to figure out who was on the ice, who's not on the ice. Going with the team on the ice has again helped me out quite a bit. And so that's that realism and detail versus playability and time. That's something that again, we're all dealing with every game we have. And not only do you have the basic and advanced and super advanced rules, you also have homebrewed rules, and so that's a whole nother animal that you have to delve into. So every game has its deficiencies, and so as people play these games, they come up with homebrewed rules to try to deal with that. So that's something else you have to decide. Number one, do you want to do the research to try to find out these rules? And number two, do you implement those, or is the benefit worth the extra effort? And so that's basically how I'm playing Stratomatic hockey. I'm trying to think if there's any other things that I'm doing. So again, I'm doing advanced generally. I'm doing the deflections. I'm doing the enforcer rule. I'm debating on doing the super advanced penalty chart with the advanced power play. I think it's called a chart. Yeah, the basic and advanced power play chart. Interesting to see how that might work out, whether that's going to add too much to my game. Like I said, right now I'm at that threshold where it's getting to where I'm starting to it's getting to where the playability is starting to be sacrificed a little bit, and so I might want to kind of just double down and play it the way I have it for a while, see if I can get good enough at it to whittle enough off that I could add that extra the super advanced penalty chart. I'm doing the advanced face off. I have no interest in doing the super advanced. As far as I'm not doing the super advanced penetration where you roll either the 20 or the 30 sided die. Again, I have something. Oh, that's something I'm doing. So basically, I have one issue with Stratomatic hockey you have is when you have an outside shot that's not an only, you have 3 options. You can pass, you can shoot outside, or you can try to penetrate. Trying to decide how to do that has kind of been a challenge for me, and I think it is for other people as well. So here's basically your penetration chart. I think this is the advanced penetration chart, not the super advanced. So I'm okay with that. I like that. So how I'm doing this is, and again, this sharing and this may change. These are their star ratings, and so this is rolling a 6-sided die, and this is if they take an outside shot. So if there's a 5, there's no chance they're going to take an outside shot. 4, if you get a 1, they will. 3, 1 to 2. If there are 2 stars, it's 1 to 3. If there's a 1-star, it's 1 to 4. If I roll a 6, they automatically pass, try to pass the puck. And then another thing I'm doing is, and again, this is something I've added on my own, is if who they're trying to penetrate against, if their defense rating is equal to or greater than their penetration rating, a 5 on the 6-sided die means they will try to pass as well. So I don't know if that makes any sense. So basically what it is, let's say that, you've got 2 centers, and one is a penetration rating of 4, and hit the other center's defensive rating is 4. My thought is they would be more likely to try to pass in that situation because they have a tougher defender. So again, if I roll a 5 or a 6 in that instance, then they will try to pass it. So I kind of like that. It's working out for me. Again, adding a little bit there. I also like the automated nature. I don't, one thing that bothers me is if I'm playing both teams, which you have to with cards and dice unless you've got a computer manager like with Strat or Replay Baseball. If I find myself having to make too many decisions, I stop having fun. And what I mean by that is that if I have to, I don't mind making some decisions, but if I have to, again, go down that formula where, okay, you got A and B, and then if you got C, you got to add D, I stop having fun. And so for me, deciding whether to pass or to take the outside shot or to try to penetrate, if I had to make that decision every time without any help, I wouldn't enjoy it, because what I find I'm doing is that I will constantly go with the best numbers. And again, you would do that in real life if I had a real life opponent. But when you don't have a real life opponent and you're playing yourself, then you start, what I would do is if I keep going after the same weakness, then if I was my defender, I would bring in, I would change the lines to try to match that. And then again, it starts getting too complicated and I stop having fun again. So if I do the dice roll based on percentages, so, again, if I'm doing the 5 to 6, so he's got a defender that's got a good defensive rating, the chances are that he's going to try to pass, but he still might roll a 4, and he's going to try to penetrate anyway. Whereas if I was making the decision all the time, I probably would pass every time. And so again, you get that. And so in real life, you would have it where, you may have a 1 against a 5, and you would never try to penetrate in real life, or in a game. But in real life, it happens sometimes. Sometimes he may think he's got a hole or an advantage in that particular instance. And so with an automated thing like this, I get that varied results where, generally speaking, if his defender is equal to or greater than his penetration rating, there's more chance he's going to try to pass it. But he still may try to penetrate. And so with a random roll like this, it's almost like a automated manager, so to speak. So I'm finding I like that. And so I do have some decisions to make, but this gives me fewer of them, and it gives me a varied results, that's based on percentages that they probably are going to more likely to pass. But again, he still might try to penetrate, and I like that. To me, it makes the game more realistic. So that's kind of how I'm working that, and I'm liking that. Again, that's a 6-sided die based on their star rating, whether they will pass, penetrate, or take the outside shot. On Intimidation, I do that every time, so it doesn't matter if they have a good Intimidation rating or not. I find that gives me a few more penalties. A guy who is a 0 still might get the takes puck away possible penalty. So even if he is a 0, he still can get an Intimidation. So again, it's less likely to happen, but still a possibility. So I like doing the Intimidations every time. That's working out well for me. And again, gives you more added variety. So again, it's kind of fun. You got a guy with an Intimidation of 2, and you you go to the split deck and you get a 2, that's kind of exciting. It's, something that's not going to happen often, but, again, if I was making the decision to intimidate or not with a 2, it's not worth the risk. I wouldn't do that. So it's, because you get chances you aren't going to get the intimidation, and there's more of a chance you're going to get a penalty. So that's kind of fun to do it anyway, because sometimes, again, that 2 intimidator will intimidate. He'll get the intimidation. I'm trying to think if there's anything else. So I think that's pretty much how I'm playing it right now. I can't think of anything else. Again, generally advanced. So anybody has any thoughts about the the options that we have and how they play into it? Again, everybody, it's quick play games, for example, is, I know Dave and Ron did a digital to dice episode on that, and that kind of plays into this as well. I mean, that's kind of the big picture of it. If you got a quick play game, you're obviously sacrificing detail for playability and time. So that's the big picture of it. But even inside of a longer play game, every game just about has options inside of it, and that's kind of what I'm talking about. How where am I willing to sacrifice detail for the game to play smoother? And again, it gets to that point where the detail, it takes away the fun. And I'm finding that I'm more willing to concede that than I was when I first started. Again, and when I first started, I would just stop playing the game without really realizing why. It's like, I wasn't thinking about it. It's just basically I wasn't having fun. It was to the point where it was just so bogged down, taking too long, too much thinking. When you start getting too much thinking, too much calculating, 5 rolls to figure out what happens, and it slows the gameplay way down. And you get that added level of detail, but you're just, it's taking way too much effort and energy to get there. I find that just isn't any fun, and so, I'm much more willing to sacrifice some of that at this point to have fun, and just for it to flow. So again, Stratomatic, I would say it's important to experiment, at least for me. Experiment going forward and experiment going backward. There may be a particular thing that you have played and it's just feeling like the game's not fun. It's like, well, then take something off. And that, for me, that would be the hard thing. It's like, in a war, you don't want to give up ground. He's like, I've fought and won this. I don't want to give it up. But, it could be that you're just, you might need to lay something down and to make it fun again. And you may find that once you do that and experiment, and that wasn't as important to me as I thought it was. And the game is playing so much better now. So I would say experiment. Give yourself permission to try something, and if you don't like it, to give it up. If you've got something that you've done a while, and give it up. You may find that you like the game much better. And then also, if you're in a comfortable zone, be willing to try to add something, and see if it may not be as difficult as you thought it was, and you may decide that it adds great enjoyment to the game without too much extra work or losing too much playability. So again, for me, be willing to experiment, be okay with giving something up, give up some of that ground that you've won, maybe give it a little more time. It could be that you just need to give it a little time to see if it's going to work or not. And so, again, options, every game just about has options. And so that tension between detail and playability is a big deal in our hobby. And so I'm coming to find, dealing with that and thinking about it more as I get into it, and especially here with Stratomatic Hockey. So kind of a double video here. I guess I could have split this up into two, but you know, not only what I'm doing in Stratomatic hockey, but also you know, how I'm thinking about this in the larger scheme of all the games I play. So anyway, especially on this one, I'd appreciate any comments, any thoughts on Stratomatic hockey, or, you know, options in general. And I appreciate it very much, and I'll see you next time.